Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of Split Decision. Again, this week we are going to be taking a little look through the games that we saw last week, and then we're going to be making some bold statements which the other person gets to argue for and against. I want to go diving straight into our matches from last week, Mitch, and I don't know, where do you fancy starting? Because I feel like there's a real mixed bag of games.
Right. Yeah. I guess we can start right at the start. We'll hit Ascend G2, really warm us
Mm,
up into that one. Cause look, it was a little bit of an easy start, wasn't it, to this series? It looked like it would have been a blowout, Ascend 2-0, nice and quick. Maybe we get a close map here or there. Certainly didn't think Split was gonna go 13-3 in favor of G2. I mean, what can be said there? Sure, Ascend didn't really get to have their defensive side, and it can be hard to get the attack rolling on Split, but 3 rounds total, 2 kills for CNED, one of the worst games I think we've ever seen from him. I think it's the worst
yeah.
game we've ever seen from him.
Well,
It was
I can't
wild.
imagine there being worse.
Now, look, the caveat we have to give is you're an attack side Jet player on Split,
Yeah.
right? He got to play 4 rounds total on defense side. So he had a tough time getting kills on the board. Sure, I'm not going to say that's necessarily CNED being bad though, right?
The only thing I will say, and it's unusual that I'll ever counter that point, but I'm looking at the opening duels because it's like the
Yeah.
caveat we always give to a Jet is, well, you're involved in all of the opening duels. Well, he wasn't. Like that.
Mhm.
That's sort of the weird thing about it. He really wasn't involved in the opening duels. They actually put that on Zeke, and he still had a better performance. So, I guess just a rough day at the office. Also, Mixer was insane. Like I think it almost
Should have
showed the
known.
frustration of last week where we were like,
Yeah.
why the fuck is this guy playing Initiator? And it's like, oh, it genuinely is just weird. But
Mhm.
the problem is that performance, it didn't carry on. And I think that's where this series almost fell
Sure.
apart.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're talking about Icebox coming up next. You can imagine that being a little bit of a playground for someone like a Chamber. Well, CNET certainly displayed that at times. We saw a
Yeah.
good game out of him, a fantastic resurgence swapping over the agents. And obviously a change for him as well, because he's normally picking up the Reyna. This time around, taking the chamber through and having a lot of success with it. But like you said, Tom, the performance from Mixwell didn't carry through. This was a really tough map for him and for the entirety of G2. You saw them really stall it out on that defensive side. They had a pretty good attack, all things considered, but I think those are the difficulties that we see from
Hmm.
teams on Icebox. Typically, it's easier to get those defensive rounds on the board, or attacking rounds on the board, excuse me, than it is those defense.
Yeah, I think one of the other things, I want to go on to the third map, which was probably the one, at least in my mind, that was the most enjoyable. And it was
Mhm.
mainly because we saw the death of the old Ascent comp, like the winning one, the one that basically I can't even remember how many games in a row it was, but it was an absurd amount of bind victories that they had.
Mhm.
That went completely out the window, and in ways I didn't expect it to. Like CNED moving off Sage, I think was the most obvious like move. I think it was like, okay, he can do well on Sage, but it's just wasted potential. Like this man is a superstar, and you're not giving him a superstar agent. So moving him across to Chamber, it makes a lot of sense. I did not see Starzo being the Raze. Even though we know he's a duelist, like Zeke is a solid Raze, like he has been for quite a long time. So him to move into a controller, again, the rest of the moves sort of make sense. But it's like when I think
Mhm.
of Bind, I think like Starzo playing on that Sky. So for them to just scrap that completely and find something new, and for it to work against a team that historically has been a pretty good Bind team, is a very good sign, at least for this Ascend squad.
Yeah, definitely showing that little bit of flexibility in the new face. I think this is definitely a struggle, and for Ascend overall, honestly, a little bit worrying. G2 have been kind of hit or miss, and this isn't the kind of
Yeah.
performance I want to see out of Ascend. I want to see them win this 2-0, but I'm willing to chalk that up to just a shaky first map. It was their pick. They start attack side, and that was clearly a detriment for them. But yeah, coming into bind, they got it across the line, get it done, and we got the, I guess, predicted result of Ascend winning. But I think it was definitely a little bit spookier than I expected it to be.
Yeah, I think before we move on to what I will call the fucking wild games of the week, I
Okay.
guess I kind of want to get out the way the sort of other two matches that we saw within Group A. I think that's the best way
Hmm.
to do it, just because
Okay.
ultimately I didn't take a massive amount away from these matches. Like FPX kind of obliterated OG London United, or Oglu that we're not
Yep.
allowed to call them. They made some interesting changes. I'll let you talk through that one because I asked you on the day, like, do you think Hype's a good raise? And you said, I think he can be. Comparatively to FPX, he was not.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, even just looking at Hype, you go to his all-time statistics, that was his 31st map erase ever. So it's not like he's
Yeah.
unfamiliar with it.
And a lot of
Previous
those were
stats were
early, I
fine.
feel, right? Like
Oh,
they were
that
like
was we're going
early
back
Valorant.
beta, dude. This is probably when Rays had two nades. Like, we're going way back.
Yeah.
But look, in my memory, I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess he can play a good Rays. I have like when I knew Hype, he was a Rays. That was way back in the what was the team they played for? Royals. That was it. Royals. Way back in the Royals day, I knew him as a Rays. So I
Yeah.
knew he had it in his toolkit that he played it before. Wasn't really familiar with him nowadays. So I was like, I guess he can be a good one. I guess wrong. At least on Haven, it definitely didn't work fine. Same thing where you have these role swaps, even like Hype playing in on a Brimstone, which I like. I think that could also be fun. But
Yeah. It's the
again,
Chronicle.
you don't want to focus on that or Destrian on the fade. Like there
Mm.
was
But
fine
that
with
that was a
a
big surprise.
neon.
Because
Uh,
Destrian's fade has been
a
one of
lot of
the better,
surprises.
I would say, but he got smashed, and I think that's the problem. Like we even had FPX sort of switching things up, and I think that's my real takeaway. Like, did I think OG London United were going to win this game? No. If I'm honest, did I think they'd win any game this season? No, not after the
Yeah.
first couple. Like, the beating of G2 gave us something, and honestly, I think the
Mhm.
game versus Focus will probably be pretty close. But, like, I never expected them to come close in this game. What I am enjoying from this, though, is the fact that FPX have one hell of a map pool. Because it seems
Mhm.
like, other than a few, like, maybe shakier performances versus
Uh,
Fnatic, where they played a
look,
weird fracture, other than that, they've looked really good.
look. Are we gonna like look at? All right, look at Bind. Look at Bind. Just real quick, we have the Malsey. I want to click on him. Just pull him up on a full screen for everybody at home and click all time. I think that now officially puts him as playing every single agent. I mean, are we missing someone there? Is there a Killjoy actually? Oh, he might not have played a Killjoy. Oh, Shimalsi. Come on, man. Well, look, they've got one game left in the season. And I think if he puts Killjoy on that list, he's played every single agent in Valorant. Malsi, you know what the fuck to do. You're already going out. I hate to break it to you. Your game doesn't matter.
Yeah, you
What?
should pick Phoenix where you have a 3.2 KD. There
Yeah,
you go.
no. Go to Killjoy
Look,
for
here's
one map and
Viper.
then Phoenix and reverse sweep it.
337 like there you go, ACS. Like
Listen,
you should
I'm
play
not
Viper.
sure we can look at someone who's played one map of an agent and claim this is the breakout player. All right, there's been an armchair analyst and there's taking the piss, but this I think this is an OG struggling to find an identity. They haven't found it, and unfortunately, they're out of time, and that's ultimately where
Yeah.
they're at. I again looking to see how things shape up in the future. This could be a team that has potential. You look at the names, we know those names can deliver. It's just a question like these pieces fit at Jigsaw, but maybe not the same one.
Yeah, and they can't even like swap anything back now because their
Of
their
course.
old boy has been picked up by Liquid, which yeah, I'm sure we'll come on to a little bit later. A similar story with Fnatic and Focus. I feel like most of this game was okay. It was a good start for Focus on Split, but Durka, man, like give him a chance. The man is plus 22 in a game that barely had rounds. Like it just seems like he's on another level of not just like them, but anyone right now. Like his stats throughout every single match just seem to be off the damn charts, and that's before we even talk about the rest of the team who also just look incredibly good. I think that this was a matchup ultimately just they didn't match up at all, and I don't
Hmm.
have much more to say on it really. Like and the other thing as well is it's similarly to the last game. I'm liking the fact that I'm seeing more depth from FPX and Fnatic with maps that they're bringing back into the pool, but I still feel like I've learned nothing because I don't know if the team they're up against is just worse than them on a whole or worse than them on that map and they're really good. And obviously with Fnatic you're always going to see like cool executions, cool ideas, but you don't have a team that's disrupting those ideas. So what like does it mean that they're amazing or does it mean that they're average? We can't tell because they've not played against an opposition that ultimately is going to push them on that map.
Yeah, and I think that all you can summarize it as Fnatic in this situation. They just had more heavy hitters, man. That's it.
Yeah,
Focus, unfortunately, they come in with a bit of promise. They look okay starting out the season, but the reality is nobody at the moment, very few teams can mess with Fnatic. Very few teams can
yeah.
make it even look competitive. This team has lost one map all season long in the group that we've been proclaiming is stacked out of its mind. They made the team
Yeah,
that looked like they could potentially upset some teams and push in. This is the team. Let me re-jog my memory on that Ascend game. I think they were one round away from winning it at one point. So let's see. Bind was 13-7. Focus beat Ascend. And they were 13-8, 13-9. Okay, so not as close as
yeah,
I thought. But even still, they took a map off them. They looked decently good to maybe push into that third spot somewhere along the line. And Fnatic just destroyed them, absolutely ruined them. This is possibly the best team in the world, certainly coming close at the moment. So I
mm.
don't think there's any shame for focusing in losing out to this team. And I
No.
definitely don't think it undermines the progress that we've seen from them up till now.
Yeah, I think in my mind, at least from everything I've seen in EMEA, it goes Fnatic close behind FPX, a bit of a drop Guild, and then a bit of a drop everyone else. Like that's
Yeah,
how my
sure.
mind looks, at least. I think Guild, again, something we'll come on to a little bit later. I think, actually, to be honest, we can probably go into their match now because I think the exciting ones are still to come. But like, this match was definitely closer than I wanted it to be for a team that has basically won every game so far. I think also they looked a bit shakier versus Big, whereas I haven't seen anything of the sort when it comes to Fnatic. Like, I don't think, other than the map loss to FPX, where they got banged,
Mhm.
I don't think anyone has even come close to them. Whereas Guild have had a couple of matches where I'm like, yeah, you could have lost to Big. You very easily could have lost at least a map to BBL. And although I think my main takeaway from BBL this season, they have moved on a lot from the last BBL. Much
Mhm.
better team.
Mhm.
They need the same leap if they're going to compete for like a playoff spot in the future. Like if they make that same leap again and come in next season, I think they can challenge versus teams, especially like Liquid, like an Ascend. I don't know if they'll be on a level of Fnatic, but that same gap is where I think they are now to some of the top teams.
I have to almost disagree.
In what sense? You think they're closer, or you
I
think they're
think that
further away?
I think if BBL come back and have improved 10%, I think hell, I think if they stay the same, all they got to do is keep up with the level of innovation of other teams. I think that
Mm,
you run this season again, I don't think they should be missing out on playoffs. With the way that they've performed so far, overall,
my
they
my
could
counter
be
to
in playoffs
that,
and I wouldn't be upset. And that's the first time I've ever said that about BBL.
would be you could say that about any team in their group.
I suppose it's true. Navi have
No,
had their ups
Navi
and
missed out
downs.
by literally they lost to BBL in an OT, and they lost to Liquid in OT. Those two games and they qualify.
Yeah. Well, look, so BBL, the things that are in my mind, I'm gonna pull them up here. If you want to go to their matches, they're Liquid and Guild. Just open those two. Like you got a fractured 16-14 OT, a split
Hmm.
13-9, damn
But they
close,
also
all things
lost three
considered.
series 2-0.
And then 14, yeah, but it's how close. To be honest with you, man, we
I feel like
see.
Navi were closer. I feel like
I
Navi
don't
were
know.
closer.
You see some of these games where you win 13-3 map 1 and then the team gets decimated map 2 and
Yeah, but then
3.
also
That's not a close 2-1.
versus Liquid and BBL, it was both OT games. And I feel like they should have beaten BBL.
And for BBL versus Liquid and Guild, it was OT games,
Mm,
13-10 that closed out second map
yeah.
versus Guild. Like the thing is these guys are so close that if literally along the way, if you could go back in time and edit one little thing, if you gave them one clutch, one little extra kill at the right moment, it could give them the win down the
I think
line. And
I think
that's crazy to think that they were that close.
we also have to be careful in the aspect of what we said before this, which was I think Fnatic and FPX are a level above the teams that are in their group. So
It's true. Yes. Yes.
so what I mean is I feel like they came close versus what I would say is one of the weaker forms of Liquid. I don't think that's unfair
Sure.
to say.
Sure.
Then you've got probably the weakest I've seen mech in a long time, and they got banged.
Inconsistent, shaky. Like Mech have had a good
Guild
face and a bad face.
Guild have never qualified for a tier 1 event. And they always have these weird choky games. Same last season, they almost
You're right.
lost to Supermassive Blaze, and they would have been the only team to lose to Supermassive Blaze. So
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I still think there's a level up.
Yeah.
I don't feel like they're there
Yeah.
yet.
I get
I
you. It's
think
like they're at that point where if they play a series against a guild, against maybe an Ascend, an FPX at best, they can maybe catch them one times out of 10, right? Like if the stars
yeah
align, if things work out, they can win that game, and you won't sit back and go, "Oh, FPX choked." You would sit
yeah
there and go, "Wow,
exactly
BBL did really well to win that." But yeah, sure, the other times you would expect FPX to take the win, even if it's a close game. So
mm,
yeah, I get you. They're able to compete. They're able to fight, brawl with them a little bit, but not fully compete.
yeah. And
Not
I
stick
also
around that
think
level
the
constantly. I get you.
aspect of getting up to that higher level is firstly closing out games because they don't. The only one they managed to do was when Navi lost and then basically banged them on the last map. And also they go close versus other teams as well. So it's sort of
Mhm.
like I'm not sat here convinced by them being able to beat some of these other teams. Like for example, going into the big game, I don't know who will win that. Whereas if I was saying like a guild or in
Yeah,
most cases a mech or a liquid, I would favor them heavily. Whereas with
the
BBR, I'm
mech.
like
Yeah.
yeah, like mech should, but they didn't, but
Yeah,
they
yeah.
should.
But that's the
So it's
shaky form. Yeah.
yes, and that's sort of the point. It's like I think for them to be a contender for playoffs, I think
Mhm.
there's a level to have, but they're a team that I'm happier here. Like this season, whereas last season I can't say the same. Like
Yeah.
last season they beat SM. But no, that was it. The only team they beat was Supermassive Blaze. Oh no, they beat Ascend when they were in the worst form of their lives, which was still a big win, but still. Right.
Yeah, I gotta say though, the best thing to come from this season is Zesht finally getting the win for Big on the 1 week when he's not in studio.
Well,
It
I
just
was gonna say, which of the
wow.
shit show matches do you want to go into first? Do you want to go into Team Liquid versus Navi or Big versus Mech?
I mean, let's just breeze through the Big versus Mech game, and then we'll then we'll hit Navi Liquid. Oh, what a game.
So this I can safely say, and I'm including all of the CIS qualifiers like all the CIS games I watched before they ever joined EU.
Yeah,
This was the most disappointed I've ever been watching Mech,
yeah,
and excluding. And I'm actually going to exclude Defo as well because I feel like he actually did his job. It was just that whatever the plan was not very good. But and excluding Nats, like Nats
yeah.
played fine. He played well. In fact, it was the only reason this game was even remotely close. I don't know where. Firstly, like Chronicle and Redgar were like Redgar had the one of the weirdest matches ever where he would whiff the easiest kills and then
Mhm.
get 3 kills in a running headshot with a Spectre, and I'm just like, but like, how did you fuck up the other like, and but then you got Shados at the bottom where this is the thing that blew my mind because I was checking this earlier and I just want before I let like I basically spoke for ages, but before I let you run away with it, go to performance. This is
Yep.
something I can say I've never seen in all of Shadow's career. He got one multi frag. It was a 2K. That's it. The whole series.
Yeah, that's rare to see out of anybody. In
Yeah.
a close enough game, 13-9 both maps. Look, altogether, this was not the mech that I was expecting to see. As you said, individually, we see Defo is still not hitting that superstar height.
Mm.
I'm always going to be let down by Defo having a good performance because I know he can be that
Land
absolute
defo.
X factor for a team. But having land defo exactly, and then having Nats pop off, no question that he's going to. But the team just didn't stick. They didn't fit well together. You could feel it. It just looking at their gameplay, there were a lot of flaws there, and Big
Yeah.
exploited them. We can't take that away from them. This Big team has gotten their first ever win in the VCT. A heroic victory for Germany. It put a smile on Zesh's face, more than a smile. I don't even want to attempt to describe the expression on that man's face, but there was a lot of joy. I'll say that. And yeah, they punished those flaws, but we can't help but point out those flaws being there for Mech. And I
yeah.
think that's the takeaway from it because this is a team that Big. Unfortunately, their run is it's in rocky waters. Mech are likely going through. They're in a pretty good spot to go through to playoffs, And then we kind of look at a performance like that and go, I'm not so confident in their
No.
performance in playoffs now
Well,
with this.
this group should be done. That's the weird thing about this. That this should be easily done. It
Yeah.
should be just a fight for second place, like who's going to manage to get there. It's honestly so obscure. I also think as well, like the reason I'm a little bit more forgiving of Defo is the man went 11-4 in opening duels. Like if that your job as an entry fragger is to get entry frags, and that's exactly what he did. But they had like especially if you want pain, go back and watch the attack side of that ascent, because there's very few times in my career where I can say this is going to be their game plan, and then it is for the whole
That was
map.
hilarious.
Even when it's not working, it's Defo's going to lurk in mid. They're going to wait for him to try and get an opening duel. They're going to try and set him up, and then they're going to split into B. And that was every round, and it didn't work. That was the thing that was most mind blowing. Was just like it had little to no success. Like they literally got 3 rounds total on that attacking half, and even then we were still like they could win, and they brought it back. And that's the infuriating thing about this roster is we have so much faith in their defensive sides, and then on the second map, their defensive side wasn't even good, which was even worse. But hey, I think Twiston had an absolute field day. Like the amount of shorty and shotgun kills he was getting, like it was cheeky plays, and he's one of the most exciting players to watch. You had the likes of Lucker, I think, called an excellent game. I think it has to be highlighted. There's one of the rounds on Bind where he basically just the call would completely faked them out. Like they threw in, I think they TP'd out. They then threw in some utility, or one player went through the teleporter, threw all of his utility into A, went back through the TP, no one there, and it was just those sort of calls are just like in the moment brilliance, which was probably why they've selected him to be their IGL. Aslan as well had a great day. The thing is though, I don't know if I believe in the consistency of this versus better teams or teams in form as well. And I also still think that Obnox looks uncomfortable in his role within the squad, which maybe that was because God B was fantastic at micromanaging him. I heard that from a couple of people within the German scene, who I will not name, but
Thanks, Zesh.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't actually.
But it wasn't Zesh. So who else do we know?
Okay, there's only like 500 other German. No.
Famously a small country, so we're good
Very
to go there.
small, very small. But yeah, it's not been great for him so far.
Yeah, I'll say we've been looking at Obnox just longingly this whole season, thinking like, get on that duelist, man. Start just smashing people, destroying people. Seeing Musashi come out, have a good game as well was good to see. His chamber was looking good.
I shouldn't have done that.
You should have done what?
I decided to look who was the worst player in the entirety of the league in terms of ACS, and it was Obnox. Now, obviously, it's very dependent on role, but it's still like you've had some rough games there. Interestingly, second is DreamAss and fourth is Link. So there you go. His debut hasn't blown everyone away, and I guess this is a way to move into that match. I don't know how I don't know what you thought of it, but really underwhelming. Really, really, really underwhelming. And Na'Vi should have won.
Well, we just talked about Mac, and I think they're going to be pretty happy. I mean, obviously they would have liked Navi to win. Would they? No, they probably are happy enough with how it's panned out.
Yeah.
Looking at Liquid being weak is why I'm saying that in particular. The fact is they have to play Liquid, and if they lose, they're in threat. Then they're depending on other results and head-to-heads and round differences, and all this could come through, and it could be some bullshit. I had the conversation with Enzo yesterday where I asked him, I was making the point about how I was like, no, and I don't even know what the system is. I know we've been told it, but I can never remember. Once it goes to head-to-heads, it's like round if map.
I think it's map then
series,
round.
But all this series will be already counted. So there's a bunch of different, variables, and it keeps on narrowing them down. Like it can come down to, I remember back in Ignition events, there was sometimes they were like, yeah, we were thinking about going by kills. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, no, no, that's not how we do this. But so players don't know as well. So right now, from their outlook, it's like, well, we need to beat Liquid and we're safe. We don't beat Liquid, it's up in the air. And looking at the series of Liquid Navi, this is the best possible result, I think, for Mac, because they sit back now and go, yeah, Liquid are weak. They're there for the taking. If Met can show up in a good face, it could have a solid win. But as we just discussed, it'd be a little bit shaky as well. So it's a bit of a
Mm.
ooh, a little bit of an oof. But yeah, this Navi Liquid game, I mean, it was close all the way, Tom, but it shouldn't have been. Again,
Well,
starting at the day, Team Liquid should be taking that win.
the crazy thing, and I feel like I'm highlighting opening duels a lot. 42 opening duels taken by SSK.
Sorry, where? What?
Look at the
Oh,
look at the
wow.
fucking stats. He's got more than the rest of his team combined. That's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen.
Now,
And
again, you've essentially got a BO5 here. Like some BO5s are going to
I'd
have less
still
rounds than this. 13-11, 13-11, 16-14. But yeah, all that
but
accounted for.
look at anyone
He's
else.
still, he's
No one
plus
else is
12.
even close. Yeah,
He's
no
plus
one else
12.
is
That level of
even close.
consistency from somebody who is playing a lot of the time the chamber, that's what you want. That's what you need.
Yeah,
If you're
yeah.
a good
It was
chamber, you're
nuts.
getting involved in those early fights and you're really threatening your opponents. Well, you're plus 12 in a series, you know, you are threatening your opponents.
He had an amazing series, and that was the thing. It's like I feel like DreamHack definitely added in a more supportive element. It's clear that they want to run more Breach, which I'm okay with. I guess Link statistically wasn't having a great time on the Breach, especially when you look at like split maps. A lot of the time he was getting isolated. I'm not convinced by the change just yet, but I imagine there's been max a week turnaround. He probably wasn't kicked on the day that it ended, so chances are they've had like 3 days to actually implement everything with him as a player. So hopefully there's something else, like okay, maybe just a better vibe within the team, or they just feel like in specific agent roles he's going to work out better for them. But I don't know. I'm not convinced that this change has made much, if any, of a difference, and I'll be interested. I kind of hope I'm proven wrong, because a strong Liquid going into any playoff stage is always really exciting. But Na'Vi, as said, Na'Vi are a team of almosts, and as said, they could easily have qualified themselves. I actually am not sure though if I would have been more happy if Na'Vi or Liquid had gone through, which is a kind of a mad, like obviously they weren't in direct competition in terms of wins and whatever, but if Na'Vi had gone through, I think SSK's look really good. I'm really impressed with Cloud. Duno as a supportive element's been decent. Zeddy, I think, has actually been a good addition to the team. And okay, Dinks has had a rough day in this game, but he's still someone I am very much a fan of. Whereas I don't know where I stand with Liquid, because I don't think the calling's been particularly good. I think that they've made what I would call more of a rash decision. So I don't know.
At the same time, though, you know, we've seen so little of DreamHack. I'm gonna need to see,
True.
you know, 1-2 months down the line till he can really start to mold this team and you know, have his impact in whatever shape or form that takes.
Yes.
So yeah, I'll give him a month or two of runway, see how he's performing.
Does he
But for
last
now,
a month or two if they don't qualify?
well, we have those questions.
We've
to
already
ask,
got
absolutely.
50% of the prophecy, and the only all we need now is G2 to make a move after they've been eliminated, which I don't think is the most wild of accusations. And you know what, Mitch? I think we need some wild accusations. I think we need some wild statements, and finally get into what is our third episode of Split Decision. So, for anybody who doesn't know, we each have statements. Some of them may be outlandish, some of them may be fairly plain Jane. But the point is, you don't get to choose which side of the statement you argue. The other person does, and then you have to argue the opposite. And basically, it's down to you guys to decide whether you agree with myself or, for some reason, with Mitch, who obviously probably should have got slaughtered a little bit more by Mystic last week, but I don't think he actually saw the clip, so maybe I'll send it to him. You got lucky there. Do you want to go first, or do you want to go second? That's the question.
I'll go first. I'll start it out strong. So my statement to start with, Tom, you get to choose whether you agree, whether you disagree, and argue for or against it. I'm going to say that Fnatic right now are the best team in the world. Go ahead.
Ooh, see, the thing is, I need to catch up on a lot of other regions, so it depends. I wonder if you've just got like a snake in the grass somewhere where you're gonna be like, actually, DRX have not lost a round, and I'm like, oh no. Just for the sheer bias of it, I'm gonna say true. I think they are.
Okay, well, you want to go ahead and explain why, Tom? Why are they better than every other team in the world?
So, firstly, I am EMEA biased, so that is where I will kick off my statement. But
Mm.
also, I just think like Durka's in the form of his life. We've seen that before, where like basically going back to the first Iceland event, where he was easily one of the best players we've ever seen. That was enough to get them all the way to the final, and the only team that beat them was the invincible Sentinels at the time, a team that basically never really lost. Like had never lost in their region, never really lost on I think they didn't lose a single match on the international scene at that point. So him being back in form on a new agent on Chamber, fantastic. I think the supportive elements they've added in the likes of Fearoth with secondary calling, and also just it seems to bring a huge confidence boost to the rest of the roster. The way that they're beating teams like FBX, who I think if they'd gone to Iceland, many teams many people would have had them going through as one of the best teams at that event. And I think they probably would have been in with at minimum a top 4 shout. Now, they didn't struggle too much against them whatsoever. They beat quite easily previous champions of the year. And realistically, I think that with the firepower addition of Alfire, I think that they should be able to blitz a lot of rosters. And although I think them versus the likes of an Optic or something like that would be pretty close, I'd edge them slightly right now. Now, obviously, huge amounts of bias there because we're not seeing the international play until quite a bit later on. But at least in terms of form, I also think Optic have lost a game within their region, so not nowhere near as an invincible a run as Fnatic have had.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm with you. If you thought I was gonna argue Optic and take a North
I'm
American
curious
team,
who you are
wow.
gonna argue here.
Wow. Wouldn't it be funny if I hadn't planned for this? No, no, of course. We got Fnatic as number one in my heart. But Tom, you've helped me out here. Because I'd find it hard to say anyone other than Fnatic. I mean, my boy Enzo's there, you know what I mean? What can I do? But you've opened the door. I gotta say someone else. And Tom, honestly, you've surprised me. I had a whole spiel ready about Fnatic because I thought you were, a man of your word. But I guess you're not. I guess you're no good liar.
Okay.
Guess I'm the only real paper boy in here because if we look at Group C of APAC, let's look at the APAC, baby. We got Paper Rex. They are absolutely storming it, man. These guys have been annihilating regionally, making it look easy. And Tom, you talk a big game at international events. You come around, you'll hang out with the guys. Yeah, I think you're great, guys. Yeah, look, I got a little badge. Yeah, wow. Go Paper Rex. But when it comes down to it,
I can't believe this is even being attempted.
now we know what he is. Paper Rex, the team that took down the guard, my pick to take it on the international stage, and they have not been looking any weaker.
They lost within their own region.
They lost a game. Oh, shit. They lost a game. Tom, get over yourself. You don't have to be flawless. Everybody's flawed, Tom. Look at you and I. Everybody has a flaw. But the thing is, in the long run, I'll stick with them through thick and thin because they are going to show it on the international stage. They're one of the best in the world. They got top 4 last event.
Oh, no. According to you, they are the best in the world. That was the statement.
Their result was top 4. In my heart, they're number 1, Tom. And I thought they were in yours as well. Today was
utter bollocks being brought out here because Mitch didn't come up with a counter argument. So that's good.
Whoa, sorry. Whoa, you think that Paper Rex is actually a bad pick here? You think that saying Paper Rex are number 1 after
in the world
run,
in the world?
Sure. I don't think that's too far fetched. They were top 4. They were damn close. I'm gonna say it.
But that's not
coming in the next international event. They take it, man.
They were top 4, and so surely all the teams that finish above them by that logic would be better than them.
Okay. Did Fnatic finish above them?
But they had 2 stand-ins. So it's not even the team, and it's a different roster.
They're the best team in the world, though. Right?
Oh, God.
Best team in the world, and they didn't even make top 4.
Well, I'll leave this up to everyone else.
Hey, you know what? Rankings. Let's go down. Knights Wings Gaming. Congratulations. Number 1 in the world. Number 1. We're going by Tom's rules. Doesn't matter where you play.
Oh, my
Listen,
God.
I picked someone that ranks higher on the international scene, so I don't know what you want to say, Tom. Seems like it's a clear winner there.
Yeah, I agree. There is a clear winner there. Okay, my statement is, out of all the players on Team Liquid, Link was not the right roster move.
Okay, so your statement based on your opinions that you've said on this show before, I mean, I'm just doing some basic connecting the dots here. You're saying that Solka should have been removed.
No, actually, it
So,
does not.
before I respond, then I'm just going to quickly quote what I said, what Tom said, excuse me, last week or the week before, which was that, well, who would you remove on Liquid? It's not going to be Navarra, Scream, Yumpy,
Mm,
to summarize. And he went, so it's one of the Brits.
yeah.
So, Tom's statement is Solka should have been dropped. I
No,
might
my
disagree.
statement is Link was not the right player for
You
Liquid to
know what?
remove. You
All
can take
right.
that as you will.
You know, I'll let you answer because I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna say Link
Okay.
was the right move, and
So
I'm
you're
gonna say that based on a couple of things. We've already
all right.
talked about his breach performance maybe needing a little something, and you've got a player here who's available right now, looking for a team who maybe brings that element. I don't know what their personal relationship is with Dreamers, but I guess they knew him from before. Make that kind of switch mid-season, you must know him. Now it tells me two things, right? Mid-season switch, either Link's really fucked up, which based on everything that's happened and what he's tweeted, that does not look like it's the case. It looks like
Yeah.
it is genuinely, as we said before, the right. They are all jigsaw pieces to a beautiful puzzle, just not the same one, unfortunately. And someone had to go. And from the team's perspective, they already think it was Link. So, they're with me on this. I'm already backed up by 4 pros. But then I'm backed up by Link as well, who tweeted out that this was something they needed to do. So I've got all of
Mm.
Liquid behind me. I've got Link behind me as well. Um, I think that's probably enough. Plus the breach performance with
Oh,
Dreamers
I've got.
coming in, maybe providing IGL.
Mm.
That's a
Okay.
that's a really cool element. But yeah, go ahead. Why
Okay.
should they have dropped
So
Link?
you've got the
Shouldn't they?
liquid players. You've got the liquid players behind you. Now those liquid players also made the decision to part ways with
Right.
Sliggy by not
Okay.
listening to him.
I
So
see.
obviously Mitch has said that that was a good
All
decision
right.
as well because obviously all of the
Oh,
players. Don't
okay.
worry, Sliggy in his
I don't
stream
know.
is
That's what
it's
I
not
said.
like he's
Objection
doing that
hearsay.
well.
Objection hearsay. That's not
But
well.
I think
Objection.
that honestly, one of the main problems I see with Team Liquid is just the scenario of too many cooks and not enough
Yeah.
sort of like role players within the team. I actually think that although it sounds mental to say, I feel like it should have been Solkas and Link both staying, and I think it should have been one of the three superstars, which is mental because it's impossible to pick which one. And I think within another team, all three of those players would perform unbelievably well. I just don't think the support system is there right now. And I think their immediate response is to get rid of Link and to try and fill someone in who just fills the role they need right now, which happens to be a
True.
breach.
Yeah.
Now, in the future, the game is going to develop once again, and you need someone who's incredibly adaptable, someone who has played multiple different roles, someone who is more than willing to learn those different roles. And right now, the player I see that can do that on their team is Solcas, and the other was Link. And that's where I think this is going to bite them, because for this exact meta, maybe this move will work. But there's going to be new maps coming in. There's going to be just new aspects to the game coming in, and they still don't have an IGL. So it's not even like they fixed the biggest problem they have with the roster move, because they haven't brought in someone who is going to be that tactical genius. In fact, they got rid of that guy. He was their coach. So
Yeah.
I think that this move of Link being removed isn't going to be a long-term fix. And I still think either you're going to need Yumpy to continue to just flex into more and more roles until he's basically just hard carrying the team on every agent, or you're going
Mhm.
to need Scream and Navira to be able to pick up more. And I think that's actually the bigger issue, is that right now you've got Scream who's playing a decent raise and still frags highly, and you've got Navira who can stick it on the Sentinels and when needed can pick up that chamber. But I just don't see the flexibility there as much, and you're going to need Dreamas to show that flexibility, which thus far his main agent pool is played by Navira.
Yeah. I mean, I can certainly see that. I have to stick back though and say that I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have these superstar players if
Oh no,
they're
for
not
sure.
carved into stone in the way that they play, if they're not stuck in their ways. And I think we've already seen the fact that Yumpy is essentially an Omen main at this point, and a pretty good one.
Yeah,
No,
it's
not
decent.
he's not doing terribly in that role. We've seen his other roles before, like his Killjoy. There's plenty of things that this guy can do, and if you've got three superstar players that can flex like that, and again, Scream when he came into the team, first thing that he picked up was a breach. I think that's a very,
Mm.
very valuable thing to have. If I had a choice of building, a team around four of guys like that and a tactical genius, the question that we have there is, in what capacity is Streamus coming in? Is he coming in and actually, like, we don't know this, but he's a 300 IQ IGL. They happen to play some scrims with him, and we're like, oh my god, this guy's changing our life. It's
Yeah.
like having Sliggy on the server with us, and now all of a sudden, boom, this is the best team we're ever going to see in the coming weeks. Maybe we don't know, but short of something like that, I have to say, yeah, maybe it is a short term solution and not necessarily the right one, but I it seems like with Liquid, the thing is you could remove any one player. You could remove two players at random and you'd still have a really good core team there
Yeah,
to build
exactly.
around in any way. So there's so many different segues that could be made with this roster. And I think yeah, I don't know how they arrived at Link. He wasn't really on my radar, but fair enough.
All right. What's your next statement?
Okay, so my next one, Tom, actually still sticks with Fnatic.
Okay.
And this is a little bit different. I don't know which way you're gonna go with this one.
I hope
So
it's
my
not about the
statement,
cutest player again.
it is, it is, it is. Come on, when it rains, it pours, my man. My statement number two: Enzo,
Oh my
best
god.
supportive player in EMEA. Take it away.
Hmm. See, I feel like this one's going to be up for debate massively,
Mm-hmm.
just because I feel like there's a lot of players that are very good in supportive elements, and I feel like I'm gonna disagree, but purely because of the reason that I can mention multiple players in my argument that I think not necessarily do a better job, but do a very similar one. And so to state him as the best then makes it incredibly difficult to actually go down that exact route. So to start with, I would say that actually one of the players who impressed me most supportively is probably going to surprise a lot of people. It's actually Duno. I think that he has some of the best flashes of any player I've seen. I think he's incredibly good at sort of like setting up the remainder of his team. Is
Mm-hmm.
this what you were going to argue if I went the other way?
I thought I could lay a little trap, and you'd be like, "I'm gonna take Enzo, actually,"
No.
and then
But
I'd be
yeah,
like, "Ha ha, motherfucker!" Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I think Duno is fantastic in that supportive role, but
Shit, I almost had you.
I would also put Xiao in there because I think that
Sure. Yeah,
Xiao
yeah.
has proven to be one of the most flexible players in all of EMEA. He still frags to a ridiculously high standard, but then if you look at some of the executes that FPX have pulled out this season, it's beyond a joke. Like how good some of those setups are. I think my favorite setup of the entire season came from them on their A site execute, which the most of it was revolving around his C's. I think in combination with a fragment and it just trapped players into a corner as they tried to cross back through the door. And these are things all while dropping some of the best stats of anybody in the entire season. So I could say that Enzo is a very good supportive player, but to put him
Mm-hmm.
as the best, I don't think is true.
Well, let's talk about that. Shit, I was so ready to catch you with this pitfall, so I'm gonna strengthen your argument just out of pride. So Enzo, let's talk rounds. 162
Uh,
rounds played, assists per round, 0.48. So 162 rounds played.
should I bring this
Duno,
up on the side?
200. Yes, please. Stats all sort by assists per round. Duno actually leads by quite a bit with 265 rounds played. That is 103 more than Enzo, a significant
Oh,
percentage,
damn.
and has point zero 0.01 higher. Now, I mean, just
Yeah.
look at the drop off. I think that's the key thing to look at here is how starkly these stats drop off as you go down the list, how much those rounds played drop off for significantly high numbers as well. For Duno to have that level of success and then to come in as well and to have that success in games that are shaky as fuck, man. Like they're playing either getting dominated very hard to get assists in a game where you're getting
Yeah,
fucked up.
yeah, that's true.
And the other aspect, now maybe you're playing for retakes, and then pop it in, sure, okay, but to still get, basically an assist every 2 rounds, taking into account ecos and so on, is ludicrous. Maybe there's some KO knife cheats in there, but even still, they do help. They do. It is an assist if it's an assist. Um, the other aspect is when they have super close games, they will have extensive games against decent teams, and he'll have to put those up again and again and again. Like he's being tested in these rounds. So the fact is, I think the argument on the other side is still that Fnatic are winning their games. So the
Yeah.
reality is the impact that Enzo has reaches far beyond statistics, because it is contributing to an environment that is currently proving to be, as you yourself said, Tom, the best team in the world. So
Yeah.
ultimately, I think that there is definitely an argument for, if you are a very good top two statistically in terms of your role as a
Mm.
supportive agent, you're a very good supportive agent, and you're on a team that somebody says is the best team in the world, then it'd probably be hard for that person to argue that you're not the best
Yeah.
support
Do you know what a
in the
really
world.
good counter argument to that though would be?
What's that?
Is when you have the two statistically by a big margin best
Mm-hmm.
players in the league, it's
Mm-hmm.
quite easy to get assists.
There you go.
No rebuttal, nothing. Shall I move on to the
I
next
would say,
topic?
to be honest with you, Tom, I can see that, right? Can
Well, it's
see
on the
that.
screen, so yeah.
Here's the difference, though. Here's the big difference.
Oh, here we go.
When you've got two guys like that, the
Mm.
two players with the highest kills per round, not to be surprised though, they haven't lost a series. They've won most of their maps decently
Yeah.
dominant on the back of them taking duels. But when you got guys like that, I question you, Tom. How often do you see somebody left behind? Because while it might to be killed, right? Or to be tagged and to be assisted on, usually Dirk is going to be running him first. He's going to be killing everybody. Now, maybe you can pop some supportive utility, sure, but you've got two players. So what if you pick the wrong one? They push Alpha here. He kills five.
This is
Now you
the
get no assist
biggest
that
load
round.
of waffle
You know,
ever.
I feel like there's a lot more here than we can necessarily account for. All we can really say for sure, because I mean, you said it
Oh
earlier,
god.
Fnatic are the best team in the world, and according to Tom, and they have
Over
Enzo, who's
paper
one of the
X.
best supports. So yeah, I mean, look, we could talk about
Oh.
Paper X, bring up Jing all day long, but Tom, I don't know that they would want you to talk about them anymore after you betraying them today.
After this, yeah, no, I don't think they're ever gonna forgive me. All right, I had one of mine was about I was gonna bring up something about Durka being a better chamber than he was Jet, which I think is a cool talking point, but
Okay.
I want to go a different route because I feel like we've gone too far into Fnatic this week. I think we need to lean in another direction, even though they are technically still part of this. All three teams from Group A will qualify for Masters.
All three teams from Group A.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, no. I'll say that purely because, do I think those teams are the best? Fnatic, FPX, yes. Ascend have been a little shaky,
Yep.
but on general form, especially coming into playoffs, I think they might suffer a little bit from the condensed schedule now, not having the week to prep. But other than that, I still think they'll be able to field a decent performance. But I do not see, if a reality happens where it comes down to a Guild Ascend match, Guild win that match in my mind every time. And if that's the case, then I have to see Ascender doing a lower bracket run, more than likely. Who are they going to face there? Maybe it's a Guild, maybe it's a Fnatic FBX. Do I think they beat them in a match lower bracket? Probably not. I would have to favor Fnatic FBX. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
at least one team would drop. I would guess it would be Ascend, condensed schedule, teams that they're up against, shaky form recently. So I would say Fnatic, FPX, Guild go through, but I think one of Group A will fall inevitably.
Okay. See, I didn't really mind arguing this either way because I feel like there's an argument for Guild, but my main argument against Guild is the same argument we have every single time, which is they never qualify for any event. They are the masters of the choke. They have been since the very beginning of time, and they are now, it seems. They still had shaky games, even versus Big. They lost a map to Big. They didn't look particularly clean versus BBL, and although Ascend haven't been at their best, they are a champions winning team. So, do I think
Mhm.
FPX or Fnatic will fall? Absolutely not. But there are three teams on one side that have proven they can make it to top tier events. In fact, there's four teams, but G2 are already out. But the only one on the other side, okay, you've got Liquid, who I just think look really shaky. I'm not convinced. You've got Mech, who, as said, I think this is the worst form they've ever been in, at least when they've been in VCT EMEA. I think most of the time they've either cruised through or, like last time, they got eliminated. And I would like Guild to go. Don't get me wrong. I would like
Mhm.
Guild to go. But I'm always going to, until they prove me wrong, I'm always going to have that pit in my stomach that they can't qualify for major events. And although I definitely think there's an argument with the bracket for sure, if you're going to have, initially, you're going to have the split between the two. So you're going to have one team will face against Fnatic, who are later on, and then the other team will face against Guild. Now, maybe Guild in the upper bracket can get that win, and then, yeah, sure, it would screw my plan completely. But it depends who they face, because either you're going to have Ascend face off against Fnatic. I think Fnatic win that. They're already through. Then you're going to have either FPX or Ascend face off against Guild. Now, I think FPX win that. That's two teams from Group A already through, and then you just need the last one to make the run. If FPX play Fnatic, one of them goes down, I would say they blitz everyone, and then you're just whether or not Ascend can beat Guild. I would say that's as 50-50 as it gets.
This has turned into Doctor Strange at this point. My God. Yeah, no. I think statistically, one of them falls is a pretty good because
Mm.
like you have Guild
But do you?
should
But
beat those teams. One of like Guild's a good shot of beating any of those teams. And then
I don't
Liquid
think they
Mech
beat
on a good
Fnatic or
day could upset
FPX.
Ascend.
I
I
don't
like
think.
I don't know.
I don't think Guild beat Fnatic or FPX. Like FPX, the only team they've lost to is Fnatic. Fnatic haven't come close to
Yeah.
losing to anyone, and Guild have almost lost to Big and BBL.
I think Guild could beat them. I would bet on Fnatic or FPX, sure, but I think Guild
I would,
could win.
yeah.
And I think
They'd
Guild
need a
would
good
beat
day.
Ascend. And I think
Yeah.
Liquid Mech could beat Ascend. And at the same time, maybe an FPX all form like good day type thing. But
I
there's
don't
too
know
many
why.
ways it goes wrong.
In my head, there's more of a chance of Mech getting into God form than Guild qualifying, which makes me a little bit sad.
I mean, unfortunately, he might be right.
But I think Guild only
I
have to
mean,
win one game, right?
yes, I think they should be seated pretty deep, so it's just one win and you're in. Yep,
Yeah.
because then you're top 3.
Yeah. They would
Top
be
3
because
guaranteed.
then
Yep.
they can only go into the lower bracket final.
Yep. Sweet.
So I think that realistically, I think the top 4 in my mind on what we've seen recently is definitely like Ascend, Guild, Fnatic, FPX. But if I'm flipping a coin between Ascend and Guild, just off pure like history and what we've seen in terms of success in the past, I would edge it to Ascend. Even though right now I feel like Guild are the better team.
Yeah, I mean, I can. Again, I'm sort of rooting for Ascend. It's the fact that they were shaky in some of the
Yeah, I
games
get you.
that put me into this world where I question, are they going to push all the way through? But I don't think it would be the most upsetting scenario in the world if all 3 of those teams made it through. I don't think I'd be scratching my head or going, oh, I wish such and such
What
team
about
was here
Big when they
instead.
make it to playoffs?
Yeah, when they make it instead of Mech, right?
Yeah. The all the cards align.
Mech
What was
lose
it? We
to
can go back to
Liquid,
Doctor Strange, the one
Big
in
beat
however many
BBL,
million.
and yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
This is the only way we can qualify.
We'll have to get
First, we
Zashed
need to
on.
lose our first 3 games. Then,
It's the fake. No one's
Oh,
gonna be
God.
worried about us, and then boom, we beat BBL. Big win.
Well, there you go. These are the statements that you have to decide. Are Fnatic currently the best team in the world? Is it maybe Optic or PaperX?
Paper
What else did we have? Was Link the right roster move for Liquid? Like, was he the guy that should have gone, or is there somebody else? What was your other statement? I've already forgotten what the other one was.
Enzo's the best support player in
Is
EMEA.
Is Enzo the best support player in EMEA? And who do you think is going to make it to Masters? I think that's a better question. I've said all 3 from Group A. Mitch is throwing Guild into the mix. Do you have anyone else that you think is going to be... Maybe Zesh, maybe you can throw Big in there if you've gone completely mad. Either way, that is it for episode 3 of Split Decision. Of course, if there's anything else you would like us to argue, disagree with, or just make some outlandish statements, make sure to comment that below and like and subscribe because that's what YouTubers do.